Yo, what's going on, Decepticons? Welcome back to another episode of my Virtual Arcade. Yo, and if you guys need some new gaming music, I've got you covered. What you're actually listening to in the background is Nostalgia, a hard wave non-stop DJ mix to keep you company and motivated during your most intense gaming sessions. And if you want to hear some of my other mixes, just head on over to the playlist section to find out more. And I just want to point out that Wiimotes will work on all of these Lightgun games, even with the different emulators that I'm going to be mentioning. The first game on our list is Zombie Raid, the arcade version. So for this to be working properly, you need to use Retroarch along with the corresponding FB Alpha 2012 core. This is your classic 2D side-scrolling light gun shooter. It's really fast-paced and I really enjoy the cartoon-esque type characters that are involved in this. The artwork is really cool, but the difficulty level is high. You're definitely going to be pushing those insert coin buttons quite often, so get used to dying a lot. Also, this game does support 2-player mode, so you can use both Wiimotes, have somebody else jump in, and you guys can both play this game without having any issues on the modded Wii. The next Lightgun game on the list is Dino Strike, and this is actually a Wii only release. And I felt like this is slept on because it was made by a smaller company by the name of Zoo actually, and a lot of their games are actually shovelware, but they did pretty good with this one. This game sets you up in the middle of an island that is obviously a knockoff of Jurassic Park, but that's not a bad thing because I think this is the only Lightgun shooter on the Wii that does this. Putting you up against a bunch of dinosaurs and prehistoric areas is just awesome. This Lightgun shooter simultaneously supports up to 4 players so you guys can all shoot dinosaurs together. The next Lightgun shooter compatible with your modded Wii is Starblade. Now this actually was released in the arcade back in 1991 as a game where you sit in a huge cockpit that moves around while you're moving the joystick. But this was later released on the WiiWare as a WAD, and I may be wrong, but I think this was a Japanese release only. But as long as you have a modded Wii, you shouldn't have any issues running this WAD. This Starfighter plays perfectly with the Wiimote with accurate pointing, and I can't describe how good this game looks on the bigger screen like the one that I play on. 60 frames per second, and I just love these early 3D polygons. This is definitely a worthy title to add to your Lightgun shooters, peeps. Go get it. The next game on our list, T2, the arcade game, you're going to need to use the SNES 9X-GX emulator. And to get this game working properly, you do need to set your controller to Super Scope. So just be sure you do that before you get into the game, and then reset, and you will know that your game is working properly when you have this weird purplish blue background. Now unfortunately this isn't the arcade version. I don't know why the arcade version doesn't work in Mame or Retroarch. Well, the game does work, but it just doesn't recognize the Wii remote properly. So if you do want to get your T2 arcade game fixed, the Super NES is the best way to go about it, and it does get the job done. I know the majority of people watching this know Dead Space Extraction, but how can I do a Lightgun shooter list on the Wii without including this amazing game? This game hands down sets the standard for how good a Wii game could look like. I think Dead Space Extraction is one of the best looking, best sounding, best playable Lightgun shooters all around, even as just a Lightgun shooter in general, not even just as a Wii game. But this is a game that is a must-have, so if for whatever reason you haven't even played this game yet, definitely make it an obligation to do so. Next game on the list is Hogan's Alley, the NES version, so you will need to use the FCE Ultra GX emulator. Don't forget to set your controller to the NES zapper for this to work properly. This was actually released in the arcade, but the NES did have its version of the release. I believe they are the same game engine. Hogan's Alley is definitely a classic Lightgun shooter, but don't let that take away from the fact that it's a fun Lightgun shooter. This classic has 3 different modes that will test your speed and accuracy, so give this a go and let's see how good you are. I pretty much suck. The next Lightgun shooter on the list is Line of Fire, the arcade version. So to get this working on your modded Wii, you do need to use the old version of Mame called SDL Mame. This arcade shooter is probably about as arcade it's going to get because you're going to be dying constantly. I have already tested this and it does work with 2 players simultaneously, so if you want to have somebody jump in with you, you won't have any problems. The only issue with this game is that it does run a little bit slower with the sound at times, but if you're like me and have other music or other games going on in the background, you're hardly going to notice it, and this game is super fun. The next Lightgun shooter on our list is Gunblade NY. This is actually a Wii title, but is a port of an arcade version, and it is a perfect port nonetheless. I totally remember this game in the arcade, and it's a really fast-paced game. It's not too difficult, to be honest. I actually have this set on hard right now, and you get through each level pretty quickly, but it's still really entertaining, especially when you're partnering up with some other people on this game. Just make sure you don't have motion sickness because you might throw up if you play this. The ninth Lightgun shooter game is LA Machine Guns, and this is actually included on the same disc as Gunblade NY. This is another fast-paced game with an overhead type cam just like its predecessor. Machine Guns LA is action-packed just like its predecessor, and it does run at 60 frames per second despite all of the things that are going on at once. There aren't really any hiccups at all that I noticed. Lastly, LA Machine Guns and Gunblade NY both support 2 players simultaneously. Okay, and we are at the final game of our list for today. This is Gunslingers, and this is a Wii release. So all you need to do is use USB Loader GX to get this game working properly. I think Gunslingers is a slept-on Lightgun shooter because it wasn't made by a big publisher, but it is really entertaining. It allows up to 4 players, the gameplay is about 60 frames per second, and the style of the graphics are a cel-shaded style, but it goes really good with the theme of the game, and it looks really clean. Alright fam, that about wraps it up. 10 Lightgun games that work on your modded Wii using multiple emulators. I will do another one of these in the future, but I do need some time to compile another list. If there's a specific game that I left out, just let me know down in the comments below, and if you have any questions about anything in the video, go ahead and leave your comments and questions down in the comments below as well, and I'll try to get to those as soon as possible. Check out the playlist section for some gaming mixes, and if you enjoy the content, go ahead and subscribe. Alright, see y'all next time. Peace.